Okay, we're on. Yay! Welcome. Hello there. Welcome to Real Talk with Angry Soccer Mom and Anastasia. Today we have our lovely co host, Anastasia, joining us. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, everyone. Black love, black power. And thank you so much for having me.
Thrilled to have you. Normally, our live show discussion topics include anything you feel is newsworthy about anti racism, bigotry, inequality, and corruption in America. But today, we're doing something a little different. So don't hate on me or whatever, since I did it. I hope you like this. I think it will be very interesting. It's certainly not for the new or the faint of heart. Um, but I'm excited to tell you, as always, the show is meant to be an opportunity for viewers to speak their mind and to serve as an educational tool in cultural competency with a focus on learning the truth about systemic racism in America. And today, we will learn the truth, come hell or high water, because what I chose for today and we'll be talking about um, is from the Root. It's from the Root Institute. And it features Dr. Brittany Cooper from Rutgers University. She's a professor, an outspoken professor, and my favorite all-time writer from the Root, Michael Harriet. He's hilarious. Have you read much of him? Or
I have. I follow him on Twitter and I have his book. He's amazing.
he's hilarious and he's like so real, and I love it. So hopefully this will be nice. We'll have a discussion. You and I will, and the audience hopefully will come around and jump in.
Let's do it.
Okay. Quick, boring announcements for 1 second. Um, I am excited. I got my Patreon and another patron this week, and I'm very psyched on it. And I thank everybody so much. My friend Robert joined this week. I'm on Patreon because I'm getting booted off everything else. And if you go on Patreon, you do not have to pay 1 cent. You will have everything you have on everywhere else. And so do not fret. It is not to steal money from you. I got to get off all these social media networks. They're booting me off. I got to leave before they kill me. But I have so far 4 patrons, and I'm like totally jazzed. So thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who supports the conversation. I really appreciate it. And okay. Thank you, Michael. I wanted to give special thanks before we start to people who for believing in what I'm doing and what my guest Anna. She's not really my guest. She's just a regular now, but my co-host. My
Thank you.
Co-host. If you want to give me the honor of having, hey Dave, if you want to give me the honor of sending me some breaking news that's relevant, that's where you can do it, or personal message me if you have something to say. And I already told you everything I have on the Patreon platform is free to everybody that I have on all my other ones. And thank you for the only difference is that if you want to support my efforts in educating white folks about systemic racism, you can become a member and get like these crazy perks, and they're all just so weird. And I can't really start until I get a bunch more people because they're just crazy, but they're starting. Thank you for whoops, I put the wrong thing up. That's Patreon. This is where you can send me breaking news. And next, today we're probably not going to take too many calls because it's going to be a fast moving show, but this is normally the call-in number. It's right on there. And tonight, let's get going. We have a little different format. Like I said, it's kind of scary. We're going to listen to Dr. Brittany Cooper and Michael Harriet of The Root, and they're going to have a very, very candid conversation. This is not for people who are just learning about systemic racism per se. You're certainly welcome to be here. But just a quick warning, they do not mince words. They say it like it is. And yeah, that. So I will start the video, and I have certain break times where I will ask questions, and hopefully people will jump on in and tell what they think. And these people are talking like probably they talk when they're alone. They're not trying to look out for the sensitivities of white folks. I'm just warning you right now. And that is hard for some of us, okay, depending on where we're at on the anti-racism continuum. But we will live. We will live. Nobody has ever died from listening to uncomfortable things. Many, many people have died because of our continuous perpetuating systemic racism. So feelings over lives.
Well, you know what they say, facts don't care about your feelings. And at the end of the day, America has never spared our feelings. So I really could give two damns about it, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because I'm like one of those like touchy-feely. Yes, Michael does support me on Patreon. Thank you so much, Michael. I'm one of those touchy-feely, like I would carry everyone from room to room. I know it's not right. I was born that way. It's a curse. Don't blame me. That being said, I have come full circle with that attitude. Maybe not full circle, okay? But I'm just telling you, tonight is a night where we white people aren't going to be the focus of the conversation. So let us, with that warning, let us begin. I hope you get something out of this. I'm going to swap us right over to sharing a screen. Boom, boom. And let's get started.
Hello and welcome to today's episode, Classroom in the Root Institute. Today we're going to be talking about critical race theory with one of the preeminent scholars and thinkers in, I was going to say Black America, but in America as a whole, Brittany Cooper, who needs no introduction. Everyone knows Miss Cooper from, her writing, her activism. Miss Cooper, could you give us a background on your understanding and your studies of critical race theory?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure to chop it up with you. You're such an important thinker on these questions, and so I consider that a real treat. And you're also hilarious, and so you make me laugh out loud, and you have this amazing ability to break shit down in Twitter feeds in ways that I appreciate. I don't know if we cuss, but I am a cussing professor, so I'm gonna do my best. In terms of critical race theory, so there's a couple of things to say about it, right? One is that it grows out of a movement in the 1970s of a group of largely white lefty attorneys called critical legal theorists who were like, we need to think about rights discourse, and we need to think about the way that the law is actually shaped by social structures, and so we shouldn't see the law as just like a neutral sort of rule of law thing that is objective and that works the same for everybody. And so the critical race theorists led by Derek Bell at Harvard and some other folks, including Kimberlé Crenshaw, who was a law student at Harvard at the time, and who we most well know because she created the term intersectionality. They come along with this critique and they say, look, y'all got to be able to talk specifically about race, because isn't it just like the white left to want to have a broad critique of structures, social inequality, class problems, and then not to want to talk about the major elephant in the room, which is race.
Okay, gotta stop it right there. Before we go on, I just wanted to jump in. This part of this went viral, okay? And not the good part, okay? They do want to talk about race. They do not want to talk about the economics, which is a huge component. We all know that. But they are talking about systemic racism. And so that is where a lot of people kind of, take offense. I started watching this, not from this video of their actual presentation, but of a 2-minute clip that basically took all the nasty things out of it. Like if you pulled it out, it would sound like, oh my God, what? All together. And I went on and saw all the comments of these people. People were going freaking nuts. Okay. They didn't care what they had to say. They didn't hear the entire thing. It was just classic far right. I'm telling you. And the left does it too sometimes, but far right does it a lot. So that's why I thought I'd give you a heads up. This went viral and people were furious that these people dared to speak, and we're going to talk about that later. Okay, just wanted to kind of jump in there. I know, yeah, I know. I can see your head going, yeah. Yep, that.
So the critical race theorists sort of show up in the early 1980s and they say, we need to think about the way that racism affects how the law is practiced. One of the things that's most interesting about Derek Bell is that he says, look, racism is a permanent feature of American life. It is not going away. And I think that that is super interesting because I think it's a question that we should ask ourselves more often. Like, what do we believe about racism? Do we think that it's actually a thing that can be conquered? Do we imagine a world in which it doesn't exist? Or do we do like many critical race theorists and say, this country was built on racism. Racism is going to exist as long as America exists. And so knowing that, then how do we sort of, situate our struggle? And so that is like one of the core questions whenever I, teach critical race theory in my college classroom.
Okay. So here is the question. Racism is not going away ever. It's part of American life. That's one stance. What's your view on racism? Can it be legislated away? Or will white people always be like this? We should just hold back and just try to hold back our own or white folks' ability to harm us. And my opinion obviously is I absolutely think it's a social construct that duh, right? Or I wouldn't be doing this. A social construct that doesn't need to be a part of society. It's a choice. It's, the more educated about a real racial history someone is, the easier it is to understand how our culture of white supremacy came into power and why those with money and power do not want to change. What do you think, Anastasia?
Okay. So that was a lot.
Yes. And it's kind of like that.
Okay. So this is my thing. You cannot bear good fruit from a rotten tree. I've told you that. So the fact of the matter is you have Michael L.F. say racism isn't American. He's right. Racism isn't American. Trust me, racism is multinational, multi-ethnic. It's a global virus. Okay? It's a global virus. Okay? And he's also right. The virus is within all ethnicities, creeds, and colors. Okay, now let's talk about white supremacy. Okay, this country was made for white people, period. Period, full stop. When they came over here, they didn't come over here to say, okay, we're going to live amongst the indigenous people, the First Nations people. We're going to work together because they were here. If you see many things when, first of all, there wasn't a white until there needed to be a black or there needed to be an other. Okay. There wasn't a white. And these new white people that we have over here, the Irish, the Scottish, the Dutch, they weren't even considered white when they got over here. So let's be clear about that. That's a construct. The fact of the matter is, Jane Elliott said, if we wanted to get rid of or mitigate racism, if we wanted to really productively do something about it, we would have to start from pre-K all the way to 12th grade teaching anti-racism, because it's not enough to be not racist. Okay? The fact of the matter is, Michael said, of critical conquer with critical thinking. First of all, you have to learn how to think. If you're socialized into the fact that all of these people are out to get me, they want what you have. These people are beneath you. These people, they're here, they want to kill you and all kinds of things like that. The simple fact of the matter is you're just going to be socialized and indoctrinated into things. There was a video just recently about this man, and they asked him, what don't you like about critical race theory?
He probably doesn't know what it is. So.
Yeah, I don't even know what it is, but you know what somebody said? They said he knows what it is. He just doesn't want to be he just doesn't want to be caught on tape saying anything racist. My last point, yeah, he was
hiding. We'll get into that in a minute.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't the fact that he didn't know what critical race theory was. You just don't want the whole picture. You understand what I'm saying? To be seen. And so what you're going to do is you're going to covet certain things, because it's worse in this country to be called a racist than to do racist things. Period.
Good one.
My last point is this. This country is over as far as I'm concerned. This country has had time and time again to change itself, right? It doesn't want to change itself because the people that are in charge are benefiting. So now you have classism, elitism, and they use the tools of racism and xenophobia and all of these things together to control the people. But that does not have a dumping ground for the people that are buying into it, living in it. And my whole thing about it is Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. always said that white supremacy is going to be on both sides of the argument. I forget, I think it was Nails and Glitter talked about pessimism. After I've seen and read and studied history globally, I have no delusions of grandeur of this country. And I'm talking about not as this country as a whole, but globally. Because globally, people of color are treated horribly. And until we look at it as a global way, nothing is going to, because I can go to Africa right now and be racially profiled in Africa. I could go to Jamaica right now and be racially profiled. And you know the reason why I know that? Because it's already happened. And was it by white people? No. So just because you're not in the dominant majority, or excuse me, because white, Caucasians, new whites are not the majority. Just because you're not a part of the dominant minority doesn't mean the poison is not going to get to you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Great points. And they're going to talk a lot about this. They're going to really tear this apart. Excellent comments. Everybody, yeah, very, very nice. Now, I'm going to keep it going for a little bit, and I'm going to keep stopping and trying to ask people questions and jump right in. There's no wrong or right answers. As long as you're thinking, that's what matters.
What I was going to say to you, Michael Ella, he talked about being in New York City, right?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, I'm from New York. Okay. When those people from different countries came into this country, they weren't N-words. They were discriminated against. Yes, they were called names, but they also assimilated into the dominant minority.
They were able to, right? And he knows that. Yeah. They were able to.
They assimilated into it. They didn't come and say, well, we're going to fight with you because we all are on this plane. So if the front goes down, guess what? No, they said, okay, we'll go into that too. So.
Oh, yes, you're right, Nancy. Yeah. So I mean, it's everybody has a different experience, and we're just kind of sticking with the systemic part of this. But yeah, some people are more evolved because of it. I mean, if you think about it, it was not to the same degree, right? Exactly. Of course not. And part of it, just like your sexuality or your religion, you can hide it. I'm just saying, for the most part, you can. If you are Black, I'm sorry, that's no. So I mean, that's 101. You get that. But yeah. So this gets interesting. This is kind of philosophical. So let's keep going. And thank you so much. And for you're wonderful, Anastasia. You're wonderful. Most people, 3 out of every 4 white people, adults in America, you say, do not have a single close friend who's not white. Okay, like they don't. 3 out of every 4. So when we talk about people who have grown up in, with everybody, it's like that really isn't what 75% of the people have done.
And proximity does not preclude you from being a racist.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing. Proximity does not preclude you from being a racist, because he's talking about being an Italian in New York. Yeah. But we both know there's places in New York as a Black person born and bred that I know damn well not to go in that neighborhood. And we have seen places, Yusuf Hawkins was killed like that. There's been many of Black people that were killed in Italian neighborhoods. So, and Hispanic neighborhoods. So come on, like,
no, I think
it's not the movie A Bronx Tale basically gives you an eye into that.
Michael says, because of skin color, we could eventually assimilate. My point was that my father backhanded me to the ground when I was 10 for using the N-word. I didn't even know, but he told me the stories. Right. And so Michael was, welcome. Michael was raised by parents that, I don't know how common that is. But Michael was raised with parents who said, don't you dare, not on my watch. I hate to say it, but I'm just guessing that's probably not the average experience of white folks, being that 3 out of 4 white adults in America do not have a single close friend who's doesn't look just like them. And so, I mean, think about the way we are so segregated. I've read things that say we are more segregated than pre-64. It depends how you look, but I absolutely believe it.
And the schools in New England, Massachusetts, to be exact, we just had a young lady, 16 years old, that was lynched out there.
There's just so many incidences everywhere. It's damn. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to be the timekeeper pusher. Tatiana, Anastasia, repeat my words. I came here 5 years ago. I am white, but my English is broken. I am really not sure my manners here. America still looks at me like someone who's worth. Yeah, okay. But I get it. It's different. Let me explain. And should I? Okay. If you are not from this country, we have a very special kind of racism here. It's very, I don't know how to explain it. It's not, I don't know how to explain it. There is a pecking order, and it is extremely tiered. And for some reason, we absolutely are incredibly racist to Black people. And it doesn't mean your experience particularly is going to be great, but yours won't be bad because of the color of your skin. Okay. It might be bad because you have an accent, or you're an immigrant, or maybe economically, it might be bad because of a personality, or where you move, or that, you're in a rural or city area, but you'll have problems here. This is not a perfect country, but your problems will not have to do with the color of your skin. So I don't know if that explains it a little bit better, but I am so sorry that you've had a, kind of an experience. There are many, many privileges. White privilege is just one. And the poorer you are, usually the less you got of it, but you still have it. So
right. And a lot of people don't understand being privileged and having privilege is 2 different things. And Angry Soccer Mom, and then we'll go to the video. I like to put a disclaimer out to people. Absolutely. It's not my job to be here to make you feel comfortable, period. Right. I'm here to have candid dialogue. Mm-hmm. Being a white passing Italian is not the same thing as being a Black person anywhere globally. Nobody's discounting an experience. We're just simply saying it's not my job. Okay. And again, the color of skin does not matter with slavery
I'm
and
talking
history.
about America. I was talking about the United States.
Right. But what I'm saying is what Michael just said. He said the color of skin does not matter with slavery and history.
Right.
I'm not going to argue that.
No,
I'm not going to argue that because the simple
our American culture.
Right. I'm not going to argue that because at the end of the day, when we're talking about slavery, okay, that it did, the identifier was the color of your skin. Were there some white slaves? Were there some Asian slaves? Yes, ever since there's been two people. But I'm not here to make you comfortable or anybody comfortable. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I'm going to keep going on this because it's a long thing and they'll get into stuff that you will not believe. We'll go from there. We're going to stop at about 5 minutes in now. And I will ask some questions. So let's keep going.
In particular, that I try to have with students, which is what is their view about what is going to, about what we do about racism, and are they of the more liberal view that we can legislate it away and we can march it away, or do we think white people are going to just always be like this, and our job is to like hold back their ability to do the most harm?
Right. And one of the things, along with what you said, is it's important to know that Derek Bell or the scholars that we recognize as kind of the foundational people in critical race theory didn't sit down and say, we're going to create this thing called critical race theory. What they did is just approach, in this case, the law from the perspective of race and how Black people see it in this country. And from that collective of people in their scholarly works came critical race theory. So it wasn't like we're going to set forth this parameter of rules and then everything that we try to fit the law into it. No, it was kind of the opposite. And that's important to know because when you talk about this controversy that's swirling around the country, first of all, it's like no one is applying critical race theory to sixth graders in Iowa because that's not how critical race theory works, right? It's not like it's almost like trying to teach someone who's playing little league soccer how to run a major league soccer offense, right? Like you don't have the skills, you don't have the experience, so it's like there can be no critical race theory for a fifth grader because what you're trying to teach a fifth grader is the foundational things. Like, in 1632 this happened, and in 1921 this happened. So, like, critical race, it's almost impossible because they don't have the thing that is used to dissect in what they're fearing is history without knowing history, so you can't really teach it. But what I'm interested in hearing from you, because like you're one of the people who are, who don't bite their tongues about this. Why do you think this controversy bubbled up? Because it's not like critical race theory is just something that people just started doing like last year or 2 years ago. Why do you think it just swirled into the public consciousness recently?
Okay. So the question, why are all the school boards going nuts about critical race theory when it's not even taught in lower school? It's really something from law school, or it's a way to look at things. It's from long ago. I will start as usual. The term critical race theory has been incorrectly defined and commandeered into a buzzword used by the far right. It's been turned into a dog whistle for white supremacy, basically. I don't think most people even know what it is. They define CRT as guilting out white people about our past. Well, that's not what it is. That's ridiculous. It's like we're so fragile, we can't even have a freaking conversation about it. That is not what CRT is, but they don't care because they're overwrought with emotion about having to face our brutal and inhumane racial history. Okay? There's been a lot of really cool parts about our racial history, but there's also been, not racial history, excuse me, our history, but the racial history has been pretty freaking horrible in general. Okay? I mean, we can all probably agree with that if we know our own racial history. So what's happening here is it's been commandeered and changed and used as a buzzword, and it's kind of ludicrous. So people are, I can't stand it. They don't even know what they can't stand. What I would like to say, what they really can't stand is facing the truth about our past. America is an incredible country, but we've had a lot of really effed up things going on that are in our control and their choices. And so some people just don't like to live in the real world. You can love America and still hate the systemic racism and want to work towards making this a better place. So, Anastasia, what do you think?
You love people just hate me, don't you?
No.
This is my thing. This is my thing.
No, I don't.
No, I'm joking when I'm saying, this is my whole thing. When white people didn't want us in their restaurants, what did they say? Oh, excuse me, please, could you not be here? No, they say get out N-word, right? Mm-hmm. When they didn't want us in their schools, what did they say? They didn't say, well, you know what, we're going to build you a school that's just, we have the same books and all these things. No, they didn't do that. When they didn't want us for education, what did they say? We're going to kill you if you read a book, right? Now, let's remember we talked about this before. Let's take slavery out. Was everything great after that? No. Let's take Jim Crow out. Was everything great after that? So the fact of the matter is, you want us to be empathetic about your feels because you don't want to know what really happened, and you feeling guilty is going to do what for us? Let me be clear about certain things about what I'm about to say. Let's think about desegregation. What did that do for Black people? Because if you think about it, just like Martin Luther King said, it took nothing from the government to let us eat at your lunch table. And why would I eat there? Knowing that you may spit in my food, you may poison me, which the reason why Ruby Bridges, remember the little 6-year-old girl that they love put that picture up? She brought her own lunch because they were afraid that the adults would poison her. And she had to be marched in by the National Guard, not because of other children, but because of adults, right? So the fact of the matter is this: you don't want to deal with it, okay? You don't want to deal with it. We don't want to deal with it. But you've been comforted by the fact that you've never had to. Your cage was just better looking than ours. They wasn't nice to us when they told us. They're being nice about, what they're trying to say. They're trying to bring into the fold that you full picture of it. So, it is what it is. I don't feel bad with the school boards thing. What you got to understand is what they're doing right now is about securing power, because with racism, it has power. So if I want to secure power, I'm going to do it legislatively. That's where systematic racism comes in, and it's not anecdotal. I could sit on that street corner all day long and say, hey, I don't like white people. I don't want them living where I'm living at. What is it going to do? Absolutely nothing. You get a group of nothing. You get a group of white people that say, I don't want these Black people going to school. with my kids, what do? They make laws and ban people. Okay.
Well, Anastasia, can I just jump in? I just have to say this. Perfect. Banning critical race theory from being taught in schools is a fantastic example of systemic racism.
Yes.
It's like, it doesn't get better than that.
You ban books.
Yeah,
you ban the book.
For CRTs, our real racial history is really all it is. What it boils down to, it's teaching our real racial history. And the bottom line is, oh my.
Wow.
Bottom line is, that is absolutely okay.
Yeah, just don't read that. Trust me, it gets bad. I'm reading it right now.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay, right. So, right, the T, perfect prime example of systemic racism, banning the teaching of our real racial history. It doesn't get better than that for an example, right? And I didn't mean to cut you off. I just had to jump in.
No, but you're right. That's a perfect example. I'm going to ban anything that I don't want to see. That's why we say to people, you bird box racism. I don't want to see it. I'm going to put this on because I feel it's going to harm me or whatever the case may be. And I'm just going to do whatever I want. And what you got to understand is that the same thing that happened in South Africa, they were the dominant minority, but they completely took over the whole country. So now that white people are scared because they think that we think like them, like, oh, when we get in charge, we're gonna do this. That's what it is. That's what it is. They're lucky. They try to play us off that we're so violent. They are lucky that we don't want vengeance.
Right.
We just want to be left alone. That's why I say that in certain ways, desegregation was the worst thing for us, because what happened was we lost our businesses, we lost our schools, we lost everything. And now look at where we're at. Home ownership is at a terrible low. As far as job creation, as far as everyday racism is, we see these Karens and Chads every day. And so, I mean, this is about lockstep power. And I'm going to tell you like this. Look at who's pushing a lot of this. White women. White women are pushing a lot of. You don't want your kids to learn about different things as far as transgender. You don't want your children to learn about there's different history. You want all of these things to be on the fringe of history. I mean,
there have always been transgender people. There have always been people who were, not binary sexually. I mean, it's right. I mean, it all kind of goes together. Great points. And they're going to get into this too. I think, and I'm guessing, this is a guess, I can't read on the air, live, Tatiana, everything you're saying, but I think you're trying to tell of a story that people would tell to try to make people hate Black people. I'm not sure, but we can get into that. I'm going to keep going. Do you have anything more to add, or?
No.
Fantastic comments. Thank you. And the next time we stop, it's going to get interesting.
Look, I think the thing that we got to remember about the political right in this country is that they got long game for days. And of course they do, right? They have several centuries of head start on the rest of us in terms of implementing a program of white supremacy. And so let's remember that they actually started trying to see whether they could, like, throwing, critiques of critical race theory against the wall to see what would stick during the Barack Obama administration. So remember when he was running for president in 2012 and they started circulating that video on Breitbart of him hugging Derek Bell at a protest when Derek Bell resigns from Harvard Law because they refused to tenure any Black women back in 1990, right? So Barack Obama's at this protest, Derek Bell speaks, and then Barack Obama hugs him and he makes a few remarks. So when he's running for president in the second term, then they start circulating it and saying, see, he is a student of and a fan of, and a protege of this radical critical race theorist named Derek Bell. So it becomes a controversy in that moment, but essentially what they're trying to do is prime the pump. So this is a decades-long campaign in the making, that now that we are sitting home and folks have been devastated by the Trump administration and the lingering impact of what those horrid 4 years has done, then the other thing the right is doing is saying we need to win the culture war. One of the things they know about their own people is that Barack Obama continues to be like the specter, the ghost, the haunting that white folks are running away from, particularly on the right. So in some ways, they tethered Barack Obama to critical race theory. Then when Obama was gone, now they're still just invoking critical race theory. Barack Obama's gone, Derek Bell has passed away, but this idea of this sort of specter of the radical black man somehow infusing and infecting left politics is the thing they're trying to invoke. So just like when they talk about welfare queens and everybody sees in their mind a black woman or a brown woman, right? When they see critical race theory, when they say critical race theory, then what they're trying to do is get people to sort of, oh yeah, that's right, Obama, right? Secret Muslim radical infected this into our politics and it hasn't gone away. So that's what they're doing. It is absolutely a clear dog whistle. But you also make this other really important point that I want to say too, which is that kids actually can grasp critical race theory, because the issue that the right has is that critical race theory is just the proper teaching of American history, right? It's literally saying like, y'all didn't discover America. People were already here. White supremacy is a farce, and you have committed acts of violence in order to make yourselves seem superior. Kids get that, right? And what these folks are really doing is trying to say they actually aren't mad because critical race theory is just a theory. They are mad because critical race theory is an accurate account of American history, and they can't stand up under the weight of what that means for a white supremacist project if we actually begin to have real honest conversations about it.
Thank you for introducing where I was going with this subject, is what it would look like if they were actually teaching critical race theory. Because, as you alluded to earlier, one of the things that critical race theory says, first of all, it dismantles the perception of racism that that they try to. The way they try to define racism is like it's a product of hate and animus, and if there's no hate and then there's no animus, and white people don't hate black people, then there is no racism. So a white person can necessarily say, I don't feel any animus against you in my heart, so I can't be a racist.
There, we're going to stop right there. All right, what he's saying is a lot of people conveniently equate the concept of hating black people as a necessary ingredient for racism. And it shows like a very surface level understanding of systemic racism. It doesn't have to be hate. That's not really what it's about. First of all, it's a system. And also it can simply be that we grow to have a cultural understanding that white people are not an equal, or they are not our equals. Okay. It doesn't have to be we hate them, but we are enculturated into thinking and believing, and we think it's as natural as being an American. They're just not our equals. We shouldn't talk about it, but they're really not our equals. You don't have to hate them. And that is complete socialization. I just want to clarify something. A lot of people I've talked to a bunch of people from other countries, and saying colored people is an antiquated, considered a racial slur to most. And so if you're not from the US, a lot of times people don't realize that. They might not. So we're here to learn. So that's why I jumped in. But yeah, see, having hatred and saying, well, I don't hate black people, so I'm not racist. You're basically like missing the whole, you're missing just, yeah, you're not, I mean, I guess there's a certain small percentage of people who probably hate Black people, I guess, but most of the people just consciously or unconsciously believe that Black people just aren't as good, or maybe they think that they're better. Maybe the truth is, now hear me out, maybe white people are so insecure because they see so many Black people as better that they cannot compete on an even playing field. So they have to psychologically, I mean, this is some psychological shit, people.
Ding, ding.
It is. Go ahead. What say you, ma'am?
So this is the thing. I think it's fear. Not everybody. It's not. I don't think it's. I think it's ego, and I think it's fear. The fact of the matter is that everyone on this earth was born from a Black woman. Period. Facts. That is empirical facts, that everybody on this planet originated from a Black woman. Period. And in turn, they had to originate for a Black woman. You originated from a Black man. Period. You may not want to like it, or whatever the case may be. The second thing about it is, before these people were doing these things, philosophy and medicine, people on the continent of Africa taught them how to do these things. You don't want to accept it, that's fine, But the first doctor, his name was Imhotep. That's empirical data, okay? The third thing is, the fact of the matter is that you fear what you don't know, okay? And just because these indigenous people had different types of lifestyle and what you call savagery, or they lived a certain lifestyle that was not puritanical, then now they're savages. Now we got to bring religion, because then religion comes with it.
That's classic othering.
Right, the classic othering. And the simple fact of the matter is, slavery, Jim Crow, lynchings, all of these things happen, and you still was not able to kill us off. Okay, even with the substandard or no education, we still were doing better things and creating things and you still weren't able to compete. So now, who are you without your racism? Who are you?
That's
Without you standing on somebody's neck, who are you? Everything that's been created for you was created for you by whom? This is why I tell people Black people are genies. Aladdin, that movie Aladdin, for me, is the story of Black people, because he was able to create everybody's dreams, but he couldn't free himself. And that's just what it is at this point in time. They're fearing a uprising because they think that we think like them.
They're going to get right into that in 2 seconds.
Right. You couldn't even do it yourself. Like, come on, man. Why would I do that to you?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Anastasia, the way I look at it is, why in the hell was it punishable by death or some other torture for an enslaved human being in the Americas? Because our experience in the Americas is quite different than many other places. It has a unique to Black folks only. And why in the world do we ensure that Black people were not allowed to learn? Wasn't because we didn't think they could learn. Maybe we know a little bit about marginalizing others. Maybe we're just afraid, like we're kind of discussing right now, that without, a knee on their neck, we won't be able to compete. I don't know. It's a very strange.
But let's talk about this, right? Okay. Say you didn't see any Black people, right? You're in England or wherever you at. You were still enslaving people. That's the thing. Like, you've never been to a continent with people that you were able to just live with. You were enslaving the Irish. You've never lived on a continent. You've never lived in a place where you were able to live in peace with other people. This is the thing. So this is not uniquely like, because think about it. You have the Arab slave trade, and that was going on thousands of years before the transatlantic, right? That's fine. But let's not even talk about the American experience. Let's talk about the Australian experience. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Tasmania. Let's talk about all of these places that you went and you destroy. There's not one Tasmanian person on this earth anymore. Right now, the Aborigines, they're trying to say that they're not even citizens of Australia. You took their land. You killed them systematically. You took their children away. The Portuguese.
This is why I always say we have a white person problem in America. It is
right. It's not. That's what I'm saying. Like why do we call white people Caucasians? Because this one dude said he thought that the skull of a person from the Caucasus Mountains was the most beautiful skull. Okay, first of all, don't you think that's weird that this person had a whole bunch of skulls? And phrenology, like I said, my children know what phrenology is because they learned it in school. What's wrong with them learning that? And this is the thing. I know Aborigines people. What I'm talking about is the Australia government still putting that up as we still figuring it out. I'm not saying they're not. But anyway, back to what I was saying.
Right.
The simple fact of the matter is we're still doing the same thing we were doing during slavery. I don't want you to have any education. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do to stop that.
Yeah, well, they're going to get into it. We're just jumping the gun here, but everybody's having so many great comments. Yeah, they're going to get into Rashawn. They're going to get into that too. We'll a few more minutes, and we'll be talking all about this. This is a fantastic, one of the best conversations I have ever heard. So I really want everyone to hear it. And Anastasia, of course, you were adding incredible things to it. Let's keep going. Great points, everybody.
And one of the things that you talked about earlier is, and I love the way Derek Bell says this, he calls one of the foundational principles is that he says racism is ordinary, right? It's not like, it's just it's a thing that exists. It's like sunshine and oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's just a thing that exists, right? And so their entire perception of critical race theory is based because, first of all, they're afraid that it will dismantle their children's perception of the way America is and the way America works. Because if you start children critically thinking about, hey, all of the things that I thought about this country and I thought about English and the law and the world, if I take the opportunity to see the racism in this, then that's how, we move this country forward racially. And that may be the impetus for their denigration of critical race theory. It's almost like if we're talking about history, right? I always tell the story of there's, the plantation that my family was enslaved on. You could go there any day and see tours. And until recently, you would go there and 4 people lived in that plantation house and 125 people were enslaved on that plantation. And they would tell the story of the 4 people. And no one ever considered that, like, you're not learning history. It's not an representation of what happened in this space until you think about it critically. And so...
All right. So do you think he's right? I mean, if we taught our real racial history and really gave it some critical thought, maybe would we still be indoctrinated into playing out our role in systemic racism as white people?
Maybe well, first of all of us are poisoned with racism and discrimination and prejudice. Okay. So the fact of the matter is that we suffer, but at the end of the day, your white people are a part, and Asian people and Hispanic people are just a part of this poison called systematic racism. The simple fact what he's going to, when you put it in a vacuum, right? They try to give you this Gone with the Wind. I still remember at one point in time, I used to love Gone with the Wind, right? I didn't look at the part as mammy, that there was sexual violence with the slaves that worked in the house, or should I say the enslaved people. I didn't look at the other. It's a part in Gone with the Wind where Scarlett is just running and just hits one of the slaves. Like the person wasn't even there. But how does that translate to now? Me and my husband will be out and about, and I will see white people will do everything in their power not to say excuse me. Not to say excuse me.
You had said that before.
Remember I told you that they will not say excuse me. And I was watching something on TV, and they said that when white people see people that are not white, they look at them as objects in the way.
In their space.
That's why they take up so much space. And that's so
I wouldn't know, because I don't have that. I've never had that come to me. I just think, oh, they're rude. But maybe it's a step further, because for you're living in a Black experience. It's because you're Black, so interesting.
And just to answer that question to Patrick, yes, I've been to Africa. I've been to Africa a couple of times. What's your question? And so the thing about it is that you say, yes, Africa is great, awesome police and no slavery. That's a lie.
Yeah,
that's not true. There is slavery in Africa. There is slavery right now in Africa. So that's not true. And slavery by a different name when they have workers where they take their passports and able to sell them in different places. So that is not true at all. But the way I look at it is that unless we are predictable and we're specific on what we want to do. You were specific when you didn't want Black children or any non-white children to go to your schools. You were specific when you didn't want us or anybody else that didn't look like you in your unions. Be just as specific. We don't want more. We just don't want less. We want the full promises of America. We want the fullness that we are granted in the Constitution. We don't want more. We don't want you to have less freedoms. We want the freedoms that we're guaranteed about being born in this country.
Okay. Great. We're going to go on. In about a minute, we'll stop again. We got lots to talk about. Thank you, Mr. F. Black. Yep.
What do you think about why do you think, like, aside from that fear of racism being dismantled, do you think that this accurate representation of history can occur without white people necessarily being upset? Like, is there anything in the racial history of America that white people have allowed to progress without pushback?
Look, I think that white people are committed to being villains in the aggregate, right? But
Okay. We got to stop right there for 2 seconds. She said, I think that white people are committed to being villains in the aggregate. And this is one of the comments that made the right just lose their shit over this in this conversation. And they actually lost it to the point where they just pulled that out and used that as that's what she says. She's a racist. They're not considering that systemic racism has a power, has to have some sort of power component to actually discriminate or do an action that harms. Okay, it can be nasty and mean, but you got to have the power component to be able to actually do something that discriminates and behaviorally stops somebody. Black people can say whatever they want. They're not going to stop you on a large level, huge level from getting a job. They're not going to, they don't hold the power. Individually, sure, maybe. Okay, here and there, but that's not what we're talking about. So what do you think she meant by that? Does that ring true for you that she said the committed white people are committed to being villains in the aggregate?
Yes, I totally agree, because this is the thing. You know what's going on. Remember, we watched Jane Elliott.
So raise your hand. Yeah.
And she said, I want everyone in here that if they want to be treated like they would treat Black Americans
to raise your hand
in this country, and nobody stood up. So that means you know what's going on and you're not doing anything to stop it. You know you don't want it for you and your children, but you're willing to sit back. That's a villain. But see, that's what you got to think about, critical thinking. Because if I see, just recently, they had a whole thing about a young lady being sexually assaulted on the train. And everybody was like, y'all sat there and watched that. Who's the worst person? The person that did it, or the person that sat back, watched it, and took a blind eye to it?
Anastasia, Ramses, welcome. I absolutely taken that to heart and have tried to raise my children to understand that when it comes to a certain age, you do not sit, stand, or observe and watch something go on that's an inequality, anything of that nature, cruelty whatsoever. Otherwise, you might as well have done it yourself. And that's a high standard, but that's a standard that I hope for them to reach as adults. So I have to agree with you 100%. And collectively, we as white people are committed very much. If you mean racist as like a synonym for, like racist as fuck is a synonym for villains, in general, absolutely. And I have to agree with that. I don't hate white people. I just expect a little more. Okay, a lot more. So, yeah.
Okay, this is another thing I want to say. Most of the people that probably got mad didn't even know what aggregate meant.
Well, that's
That's another thing. They probably didn't even know what aggregate meant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a whole form by combining several typically desperate elements.
Right.
All she said was systematic racism. That's all she said.
All she said was the individuals that make up the parts come together, and together we act as a villain. And it's true because it's called systemic racism. Systematic institutional.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. A lot of them don't even know what these words are. All they hear, white people, villain.
They are not willing to educate themselves because they're afraid. And Patrick,
exactly,
you're absolutely right. They know their ancestors killed and enslaved millions, and they just don't want to hear it because they cannot make it right in their head. And they probably have so much dissonance and guilt that it's like some sort of psychological reaction. I don't know. They can't handle it. That's why fragility is a word. Even Germans have handled the fact that many of them were Nazis better than freaking.
Thank you. Exactly. I lived in Germany, went to high school out there. And what you got to understand is they're not ashamed See, Germany was ashamed. They were ashamed of what happened. This country revels in what happened because they look at themselves, as we conquered. No, you didn't. They look at themselves like when we built this, you didn't build anything. You didn't build anything. And if you were back in that time, you wouldn't even have the right to vote. That's what I love telling poor white people. They don't like you either.
Right.
They don't like you either.
But they've been suckered into believing this myth that if they just work a little harder and hate on Black folks and brown folks just a little more, maybe someday they'll be rich too. And it's not going to happen. Don't make me bring out that quote from Lyndon B. Johnson again. I think that's just like, I really should memorize it. But we're being played the freaking fools, white people. We're being played the fools. Systemic racism is not good for us either. Our ego will not let us face the facts. Really, it's tough stuff.
Let me read this part again. As an adjective, formed or calculated by the combination of many separate units or items. That is what aggregate means for those people out there that may take this video and say, oh my God, she got a bed winch and here's this white guilt. And what she's saying is all she said was systematic racism, mass incarceration, the justice system, casual killing laws. Let's even go back to the Compromise of 1877 when they pulled the troops
out of the South and
got them free Black people out.
Yep.
That's
push them out of office, push them out of everything. Yep. Even the discovery of America is a lie. The Vikings were there before Columbus. Yeah, it's it's in our culture to live a lie. And some of us just don't want to. We don't want it for our kids. We don't want it for our neighbors. It's great points.
But there's still, like Patrick is saying, it says even the discovery, exactly. Put an asterisk next to that because there were people living here. And he didn't even make it to the North American continent. That's the thing. A lot of people don't even think. And they said the Vikings. There were a whole bunch of people here. The thing about it is, this is the crazy thing. We want to be the first. Why? For what? There were Africans here. There were Africans here. Right. There were Africans here. There was Vikings here. There was indigenous people here. And the fact that these people are still knowing that Columbus, what he did to the Taino people. If you ever go to Adam Ruins Everything, he talks about why they did Columbus Day. And you know why they did Columbus Day? Because of assimilating the Italians into American racism. So if Michael or whatever his name, LF, was still here, that's the only reason why they did Columbus Day, because he was Italian.
Actually, when we went to the I went to the Native American Museum in DC, and they had a whole video, a really interesting video on how many of our holidays, like Columbus Day and Thanksgiving, were just contrived well after the facts. I mean, we have whitewashed our history to the point where it's all a lie, really. I mean, it's just not true. So,
okay, wait a minute. I'm a homie. This is what I'm gonna tell you. Until the lion learns how to write, the hunter will always be victorious. The fact of the matter is that you're saying that Columbus was the first person in the modern West to discover the Americas. That's a lie. That's a lie.
All right, let's keep going. And we're going to stop in about a minute and a half with more. This gets interesting. Hang in there with me, people.
But one of the things that I try to think about is, white folks sometimes don't give themselves at least a little bit of credit. And I don't think they deserve a lot of credit, but the credit I do think they deserve is there are kind of two legacies of whiteness in this country, right? Because we actually did have a bloody, violent reckoning around race and slavery on this soil. And what you had were Confederates who said, we gonna fight to keep y'all locked up and we willing to die for it. And you had Union soldiers and you had abolitionists who said, who said by different terms, we think slavery is immoral, or we just want to protect the Union, and that there are things that matter more to us than the ability to subjugate this group of people. Now, certainly it's a more complicated story than that, and we can talk about the ways that abolitionists thought slavery was immoral, but didn't necessarily think racism was a problem, right? They just thought they were going to bring God's wrath down if they kept on locking up human beings. But I tell white people, why don't you think about being in the legacy of folks who were not Confederates, right? Being in the legacy of abolitionists, being in the legacy of people who said that we cannot build a country and hope to sustain it by keeping an entire class and race of people subjugated. And sometimes I think that reminding white people that when we tell an accurate account of American history, that means we can also talk about white freedom fighters, the John Browns of the world, right? The Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodmans of the world, right? The Viola Luizos of the world, and on and on. William Lord Garrison. These long histories of liberal white people who said, like, racism is a problem, enslaving and subjugating and terrorizing people is a problem.
All right. So, do white people deserve credit for fighting the Civil War? Rhetorical question. Does reminding white people that many people in our history did try to stop enslaving, stop us from enslaving humans, and would that make us more likely to handle hearing our real racial history if we could somehow make it about us? I don't know. We're fragile.
This is what I think she's saying. It's not about giving people credit. It's about telling the complexity. There's no such thing as black and white. Everything is gray. Okay, I was in the military, right? I went to Iraq. I went to Afghanistan. Was I an evil person for going to Iraq or Afghanistan? Did I kill anybody? Was I a part of American imperialism? Yes. But did I personally kill anybody or whatever the case may be? So we have to, what the problem is, we either want to look at the person as altogether evil or altogether good.
No gray areas.
And it's not like that. It's never like, so history is going to be the same thing. Bacon's Rebellion. Everybody wants Buffalo Soldiers. Everybody wants to look at it, the Buffalo Soldiers, blah, blah, but who was the Buffalo Soldiers fighting? Native Americans. Okay, let's look at Bacon's Rebellion. Who were the black people involved in this fighting with the white people against? Native Americans. So let's talk about the Civil War.
Complex.
Okay, it's complexity that comes to it. There were people that, yes, I want to keep black people as slaves. Mm-hmm. You have people up north that I don't agree with that, but I don't want them here. Keep them down there. The New York City draft rights, that's what that was about. So until we see people and events as onions and you peeling away certain things, you peeling away certain agendas, because if you think about it, there's Confederate monuments up north too. Who put those things up there? There's racism up north. You know what I'm saying? We have to look at everything as an onion. Everything is not like this conversation about Egyptians being black. Egypt is not the whole of Africa, just like America. Alabama is not the whole of the United States. We have to look at it like that. And that's it.
Yeah, and part of the thing, I completely agree. Is this a complex thing? And there's a reason, and you're going to think this is from the left field. There's a reason that you don't get picked for the jury. You're more often not picked for a jury in America based on every single year you have in school. The more years you have in school, the less they want you. Why is that? Because you see, they want people who don't know very much so they can sway their opinion. All right. Surface level with this kind of stuff doesn't cut it. It just doesn't. You got it. Like she's saying, you peel it away. You making statements that are just bold. This is complex stuff. So
you have to, what I tell people, you have to know, some people are okay with knowing enough that they're right, but they don't want to know enough that they're wrong, or that maybe the information that they have is biased, or the information that they don't have. You know what I'm saying? Like there's, like, for instance, when I was reading something and they were saying the conservatives were bringing up, oh, the first on paper slave owner was a black man. That's not true. Now, there were black people that were slave owners. Okay, what's your point? They're wrong too. So what? There are white people that were,
Anastasia, that makes it all right then. No.
Right, that makes it all right. No. So the fact of the matter is, and this person says African Americans are overrepresented in the U.S. military active duty, but this is the thing, you got to understand why black people is black people and poor people. And the reason why is because they've constructed a system that makes you say, I will die over in another country to get out of the poverty that's here.
For the chance to get out of poverty.
Right.
It's a system it's trying to suck. You guys, this is all purposeful and it's all mixed up.
Purposeful.
Very complex.
Right. So it's a complex thing. I joined the army. I didn't join the army because, oh my God, I'm a patriot. I joined the army because I lived in the ghetto and I lived in the projects, and I was like, I need to get up out of here. So what is the army saying to me? It's going to give me college money. It's going to give me, but I may face death in a country that I'm supposedly trying to bring freedoms over there that I can't even get in the own country that I was born in.
Right.
So
what we're really doing is we're earning money for the wealthiest elites. The bottom line comes to this: is we love our racism so much in America. We white folks don't even realize we are suckers, and the wealthiest elites thank us for our service. We're doing their dirty work, as always, every generation. If we ever got a life and realized that this is not good, we're blaming the wrong people for all that's wrong in our lives. Okay? The wealthiest elites are destroying this country for everyone but them. Yet we'll never unite because they keep us thinking, oh, it's the black people, it's the brown people. It's a gig they got going, and it's going great, and they've had years to refine it. So
and that's the thing. When we're talking about this thing with CRT, you know the reason why they're bringing up Mr. Potato Head, they're bringing up transgender athletes taking places for women athletes. You know why they're bringing all these social issues up? Because they have nothing. They have nothing to give these voters.
Hate and fear. Hate
right?
and fear is all they have to give the voters. And Patrick makes a great point. Black Africans didn't ship millions of white people to from Africa. Yeah, I mean, this is not a simple, like a one-word solution. This is a very complex issue. And in America, there is no experience in our country that is precisely the same as what we chose to continue and do to Black human beings. And yes, there's tons of other racism that's gone on and genocide attempts and this and that. But what we've done is to Black people and continue to do is unique. All right. And that's why we don't clump everyone together. I don't know that they need to be lectured more. We need to learn our own real racial history so we can learn who our real enemy is. The biggest fear of the wealthiest elites is that we'll actually get educated and say, you know what? Fuck these people. I'm going to unite with my people, which is all the people who aren't the wealthiest elites, and get some freaking rights. In a wealthy country, that doesn't have all these things that so many other wealthy countries have, or less wealthy countries. It's ridiculous. We got some low standards here, but at least we have our racism.
So yeah, this is what I was going to say.
I know he is.
This is what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. We know what happened with the pirates and the Moors. Everybody knows that. But the question is, there's only one story, that the Moors also built a lot of the cathedrals and stuff like that. They don't ever tell there's only, and this is why those in Sicily and Italy, yes, we know that happened, and it's still wrong. We know that. But the thing about it, the reason why you're able to say that, Mohammed, is because you study history, and it's complex.
It is complex. Right. I am going to push, right. And we talk about American history here mostly. So that's kind of what we're focused on, that the unique systemic racism we have, because we kept things going. Oh, yes, we did. And when we tell, I need to make it crystal clear, and I'm going to go on because I don't know if we're going to be able to finish, Anastasia. When we talk about systemic racism, we are not talking about being against anything but systemic racism. This isn't a we hate this, you did nothing. We are not, nobody here is saying that Europeans didn't add tons and tons of amazing, incredible things. We're talking about systemic racism here. So I'm not sure if that's completely clear.
But let me go to this. But you learn about those things. When you're learning history, you're going to learn about Shakespeare. You're going to learn about Salvador Dali. You're going to learn what's going on, son of y'all. You're going to learn about all the great things white people did. You're going to learn about those things. You're not going to learn about the Moors, and the oldest university was built by a woman and a Muslim woman. You're not going to learn who the first doctor was. You're not going to learn that there was more pyramids and better pyramids, and the African what's the name of that thing? Anyway, but you're not going to learn those things.
Well, we're indoctrinated in our history. I tell you, they keep those history books real careful in America with our history books in the U.S. They come out of a hub in Texas, and it is political. I mean, I don't even want to get into it. Let's keep going on this, but I told you I'm going to be the time pusher because, boy, there's a lot to talk about. I'm very, very happy with most of this conversation. I really, Anastasia, you're wonderful, and everybody in the audience is really fantastic.
And I would ask white folks to kind of begin there. But the real sort of issue here, and I've heard people sort of say it, is one, I think that white people viscerally fear. It's not that white people don't know, right, what they have done. They know. They fear that there is no other way to be human but the way in which they are human, which is to, so, like you talk to white people, and whenever you really want to have a reckoning about it, they say stuff like, it's just human nature. If y'all had all of this power, you would have done the same thing, right?
Okay. There's my question. Is this just human nature? I personally do not believe that for 1 second. Because first of all, we are not born like this. Little children, they'll play with anybody. They just want to play. We are socialized into this. And to believe that we have to somehow be superior. We know deep down at some level, this is a bunch of bullshit. Superior? We're all the same race. Give me a break. Some people are better at some things. Some people are better at other things. Let's be real. I like keeping things real. On some level, we know this is a crock of shit.
So let's talk about capitalism, right? The simple fact of the matter is that they tried to enslave the Native Americans. We keep forgetting that the conquistadors, and there were African people of African descent that were conquistadors. Okay, let's not. We keep trying to separate these things. Prime example. I don't know if I told you this. But John Brown, when he did the Harper's Ferry raid, invited Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
But we never put those three people together. The reason why Harriet Tubman didn't go was because she was sick. And the reason why Frederick Douglass didn't go, because he thought it was a suicide mission and regretted not going. Why do we keep separating these things? That, okay, yes, there were monarchs in Africa that did certain things. We get that. There were monarchs in Europe that did certain things. The Mongols, everybody, okay. But to say, oh, well, it's just human nature and, there's nothing we can do about it. There is something that you can do about it, is repair the breach. You know what you did. Repair it. Repair it. That's it. And the thing about it is they don't want to repair it. And you know why? Because it costs money. This is the thing. They don't want to give up money.
Money's power.
Like, I forget who it was that said it. It's about money. It's about money. They don't. Why should I have to pay for this? But Black people have to pay for you to go to these schools that we're not allowed in, these libraries that we weren't allowed in, the Social Security Act, all these free little things that white people were given, we paid into it, but we were not allowed to access.
Pay taxes. Right. I mean, the bottom line is in a nation that's gone ballistic with capitalism on steroids, it's only getting worse because money is everything now. And it probably was then too, but I've lived a few decades and I got to tell you, the haves and the have-nots in this country are wow. So great points. Anything else thank you so much, Mark WJ150. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate
and that's the thing. No, this is the thing. These conversations, Angry Soccer Mom will tell you. I tell people I am not educating white people. That's not my job. Just like it's not the job of a sexual assault victim to teach her assaulter why raping her or him was wrong.
It's not your responsibility to live this every single day of your life and then have to come home and educate the ignorant. It is our responsibility to take racial responsibility as best we can as individuals, and that is why white folks need to learn this and teach other white folks.
Exactly. And my job in this conversation, I'm not a monolith, but what I'm going to tell you is that we're over it. We've been over it. And the simple fact of the matter is that I refuse to keep giving white people the benefit of the doubt that they don't know. You know. If you're supposed to be the superior race, why do I need to teach you? And the simple fact of the matter is that, let's think about it. We have ants in our house, right? Am I worried about that one ant in my house or that one roach in my house? Yes. You know why? Because I know if it's one of them, it's going to be a whole horde somewhere else unless I get rid of them. And that's what the problem is.
Let's keep it going.
And it's like, no, that's what white humans did. White human beings thought there's a world here and we own it. Prior to them, Black and brown people have been sailing across oceans, interacting with each other for centuries without total subjugation, domination, and colonialism, right? And that's important to say. And so they do this thing where they say, like, how white people have done humanity, how they have acted as human beings is the way all of us act. So they think Black people don't get them back. And I wouldn't be mad at the Black people who want to get them back. But what I believe about Black people is that we have seen what a shit show this iteration of treatment of other human beings means, and that my hope is that we would do it differently, in the moments when we have some power. We will not do it perfectly, but I do think that all of us can sort of agree that a politics that says like there are superior and inferior human beings just isn't the way to go. And that's the thing that white people don't trust us to do because they are so corrupt. their thinking is so morally and spiritually bankrupt about power that they can't they fear viscerally, existentially letting go of power because they cannot imagine that there's another way to be. It is either that you dominate or you are dominated. And isn't it sad that is spiritually who they are, and that they can't imagine a sort of more expansive notion of the world?
If you think about that, right?
Okay. So there's a question. This is getting loaded. I told you, this is not for beginners who are just learning about systemic racism, okay? This is for people who really want to think and are going to think. Do you think most Black people will do exactly what we have done? Do you think that we whites just know what we do, so we assume that's what Black people would do when they're the majority? I personally do not believe that for one freaking second. Anastasia, what do you think?
Who's Black people? That's the thing. We're not a monolith, okay?
But in general, that's what they're talking about. But
right, that's what okay. So let's parse it again. Let's parse it. What she said is, for me, is not true, because Genghis Khan was a person of color. Genghis Khan took over all of that. Okay, there's people all over the Asian continent with DNA from Genghis Khan, because rape is a war tactic. Okay, let's be clear about that. The Zulus, all these great empires. Okay, I don't agree with what she said about, people of color existing with each other and not doing certain things like that, because in in on the African continent there were tribal wars, and a lot of the slavery that happened, they were selling off their enemies. But let's not forget the Arab slave trade, and slavery was a part of life. You know what I'm saying? It was different, and slavery was different in slavery in different cultures is different. You could put yourself into slavery if you owed a debt, and then but anyway, then you get the mixture of slavery and being an indentured servant and stuff like that. So what we don't want to do is do the noble savage thing versus the enlightened white savior thing. It's complex. Okay, right. Now this is what I would tell you. Have I had tendencies where I'd be like, you know what, after I went to go see The Help or Roots or something like that, that I didn't want to smack a white person? Yes. But you know what, I also seeing some Black people I wanted to smack too, that were doing things that was detrimental to our community. This is the thing. They always talk about this whole Black on Black crime. We don't want to live there with them either. Like, we want you to come get them too, but don't make it seem like an Irish gangster, an Italian gangster, a cartel is any different than what's going on in the hood. It's not any different. The yoke, I forget what they call, but the Asian gangs are doing the same thing. Why we don't hear about yellow on yellow crime? Because in the Asian communities, trust me, they're committing crimes like that too.
People do crimes in your proximity, and it's just
80% of white people are killed by other white people. You're going to kill the people that you're around. It's very rare that you're just going to go out somewhere else and kill those people. Okay, moving back on. I think when you get to a point in your life and you say, you know what, I'm done with this. You have a choice the way you want to do it. I honestly am over the begging, the pleading, the marching, and doing all that. I'm over it. Like, I do it, but I'm over it. And peace, the oppressor has never given freedom, and it wasn't fought for. And I'll leave it at that.
Good point. Good point. All right, let's keep going here.
Right. Then what are the options, right? So on one side is they come around to the majority of human beings on the planet's way of thinking and say, hey, there is another way to think about power and the sharing of it and the way we exist in the world and relate to each other. But that all automatically means you got to give up some of the shit you got, right? Like it just that's part of it. Like you can't hoard and be a kind of a rational, giving human being on the planet. Like no other societies in the world kind of work like that. So they're going to have to give some shit up. And again, if the basis of white thinking is that hoarding of power and that is essentially how they define humanity and the human existence, then they will have to give something up. Or they say, fuck that, and we're going to keep all of this because if I got to give it up, then I might as well resort to whiteness and try to hold on to this little corner of whatever we have for as long as we can get. So if you look at those two diametrically, those two choices, what should we expect, right? Like, because I mean, the only other alternative is a radical change of consciousness.
Look, I mean, first of all, what kind of question is that? Because there is no answer that is sufficient. Like the thing I want to say to you is we gotta take these motherfuckers out. But I know, but like we can't say that, right? We can't say like I don't believe in a project of violence. I truly.
Okay. So this became another point that she's talking about now. One thing I wanted to jump in and say is we got to take those motherfuckers out. Okay, that just people on the right grabbed that quote and ran with it. I wasn't completely crystal clear on what she was saying. I think she was saying that it's not going to happen without violence, basically. But my point is people's opinions do gradually change over time. We've all seen it in the US. It's just really freaking slow. It's crazy.
So, yeah, when you're benefiting from it, you have the time. When you're benefiting from it. Martin Luther King said that about white liberals, about you always tell us to wait, it's not the right time, it's not this, it's not that. So let me say this. What she is saying, I'm pretty sure has came across everybody's mind. Like, these people will never be able to live in peace. These people, okay, then what happens after you take them out? You think nobody else, there's not going to be somebody else that says, hey, I want what you got. You understand what I'm saying? There's always a bigger bully. So that's why that's not a good way, a systematic. You can't hold that. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it also didn't go down in a day, and it rotted from the inside out. And that's the whole thing. We could say right now, say we take every white person out. Every white person out. Do you think it's going to be a panacea for everything that's going wrong? That once white people are gone, everything is going to be good? No, because you're still going to have Asians, you're still going to have Hispanics, you're still going to have continental Africans. Okay?
We have lots of issues and it's complex.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So you take every white person out of this country, right? Now you have to think about they are in control of a lot of things. Idi Amin, prime example, right? And I'm not saying that I don't trust in Black people's ability to govern themselves. That's not what I'm saying. Idi Amin, right? Idi Amin was a dictator, whatever. I am not for Idi Amin and some of the things that he did. But one thing he said was you had people from India that was given land in his country, and he said, guess what? You're getting out of here. You're not gonna, if the African people in this country, because it was Ghana, if these people are not owning their own businesses, you are not going to own the businesses. But what he failed to realize, because they didn't own the business, they didn't know the supply chains. They didn't know how to get this type. So, okay, you take all of these white people but that's the point. That's why systematic racism works, because once you get them out of those positions, what's going to happen? Rwanda, the Dutch were in colonized Rwanda. So what happened? They put the people against each other. Oh, Uganda. I'm sorry. You're right. It was Uganda.
Thanks, Ramses.
Thank you. I thought it was Ghana. I'm sorry. And what happened was, like he said, it all collapsed. So the thing about it is, like I always say, if we don't hang together, we will surely hang separately.
No, it's violence and actually just go ahead.
The thing about it is that we don't want to do the hard work to do the consciousness change. That's what the issue is. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do the hard work. I don't want to teach my children a different way. And I'm talking about from a white perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to do,
look in the mirror. We don't want to, right. We just like it the way it is, because you know what? Thinking hurts.
You benefit.
Hard work.
You benefit.
And we benefit from it. And we kind of like it this way. And it hurts our head a little bit to think hard. And and that's,
I benefit from it globally, but you got to think about it globally. I benefited. You have Asians in Asian countries that are doing plastic surgery to look like a white person that got surgery to look like an Asian.
And people have skin toners on so that they turn whiter. I mean, it's we got issues, people.
Just like in South Africa with Nelson Mandela. Okay, you had a black president. If you knew the Nelson Mandela prior to him being put in jail, to the Nelson Mandela, he was broken at that point in time. So of course, now that you're Santa Claus and stuff like that, now that you're Santa Claus, now you're acceptable. The same thing that they do with Martin Luther King, but they keep forgetting Martin Luther King was a socialist. Martin Luther King believed in reparations, but they always played this old character content, but they never read the first and the last part of that speech. So back to what we were saying, I'm going to tell you that I've thought on both sides of the house. And it's because I'm over it. It's like, I don't want to get rid of white people, but I'd rather live surrounded by my own people. For me, it's been much easier. I don't worry about certain things with my children. Now, let me be clear. About it. When my children went to a all-black school, because of white supremacy, not white people, white supremacy, they still got picked on.
Okay. Do you want to add anything else?
No, Ramses was talking about MLK didn't write that speech because that wasn't his original speech, is what he. And with John Lewis was going to say something about JFK in that speech, and they got mad and made him change that.
History's complicated, and surface level thinking is never going to give us what we need. We got to use our brains. And I'm like preaching to the choir here, but all right, we got trying to push us through this because they have some good, interesting stuff. Now this video, if you weren't here earlier, this video pissed off. It went viral, not this whole video, but parts of it. They cherry picked and pulled the parts that sounded really nasty to an uneducated white person, and it got ugly. And so that's why I wanted to show the whole damn thing. Oh, Mark, yay. Thank you, Mark. Mark's such a sweetheart. Yay. All right, let's keep listening. This is definitely not for beginners. Like I said earlier, this is some advanced stuff. All right. Thanks, everybody. We're all here to learn. Every one of us. Me, Anastasia, everybody. So we appreciate everyone chiming in. That's what makes it a nice conversation.
don't, because I think in the end that our souls suffer from that, and I do think that some of this is a spiritual condition. So here is where I land most days about white people, and I actually have been helped in this by thinking about indigenous people, right? See, part of the challenge around whiteness is that it totally skews our view of everything, right? I gave this like TED talk about this some years back, and one of the reasons I was trying to think about it is like the world didn't start when white people arrived in America and tried to tell all the rest of us how things were going to go. There were people out here making worlds, Africans and indigenous people being brilliant, and libraries and inventions and vibrant notions of humanity and cross-cultural exchange long before white people showed up being raggedy and violent and terrible and trying to take everything from everybody. And that's really important, because if we believe that history starts for us when white people drag us to these shores, then we can never get outside of the notion that this is going to be our existential struggle. Now, I don't think it's going to be solved in our lifetime, and maybe not even the lifetimes of a couple of generations of people to come after us. But I do fundamentally believe that things that have a beginning have an ending. All things that begin end. White folks are not infinite and eternal, right? They ain't gonna go on for infinity and infinity. And that's super important to remember, that white colonialism and imperialism has a beginning. And in my way of thinking about the world, that means it has an end. And so part of what we are trying to do is to imagine what are the steps that we must take to get to the other side of this very inconvenient, epochal interruption of like Black and indigenous world making. I mean, does that give people comfort on the day to day when you like just having to deal with white folks and the travesties that they create and the sense that they want to destroy the planet? Nah, but I do think that part of what our job is to do, and I think we don't do a great job of this in our generation. When I read old thinkers, 19th century Black folks, they always were talking about what we gonna do for our kids and for the people that's gonna be here 100 years from now, right? They were thinking about us and what it meant to build a world that was better for us than the world that they created. And they said it over and over again in the things they wrote. I think we are very much people who are caught up in this moment of what does it mean to get ours, to make something of ourselves, to self-actualize. And I think that we got to zoom out a little bit and say, there is a world beyond even our sojourn on the earth. And so whiteness is going to have an end date, because it is not, despite what white people think of themselves, they do not defy the laws of eternity, right? Their projects are not so sophisticated that the natural laws of physics change for them.
I told you guys, she's talking like she's not here to make white folks comfortable. She's not here to make anybody comfortable. She's talking about what she believes as a doctor with a PhD. And what do you guys relate to this beginning and end notion? Obviously, our history didn't start, the history of Black people didn't start with slavery. Our history was interrupted by slavery, which is a great comment. But yeah, she's wondering, is this something that could somehow make our time here, if you are a Black or a brown person, think, well, you know what? This gives me some sort of something. I don't know. I always thought that enslavement and systemic racism is an ongoing, ever morphing crime against humanity, and that it absolutely will have an endpoint. That's just me. But I want to know what Black and brown people think.
Okay, so let's be clear. She's not talking to white people.
Oh, yes.
No, I'm just saying. Yeah. A lot of times people think that we're always talking to them, because you don't have right, because you don't have to think about anybody else, right? So we're always and this is what I tell people. Right. Yeah. I'm not talking to white people. I'm talking to Black people.
We assume everything's about us.
Right. You assume everything is about you.
Just saying.
And so the thing about it is that I don't talk to white people. When we're having these conversations, I'm talking to other Black people. And that's what she's talking about. What she's talking about is that in Rome, right? All that stuff is gone, right? Those are ruins. Those things are gone. And a lot of times people don't want to look at their own mortality. So what they do is they think that this is going to be forever. It's not going to be forever. Egyptians, they thought that what was going on there and their gods, and the Romans thought and their gods. What is that now to us? But the people during that time thought it was the end all to be all, right?
Right.
But we look at
our democracy right now as we speak.
Right. So we take pieces and we look and we take pieces and stuff like that. And so the thing about it is when we look at certain things, they don't want to look at their own mortality, that you're not going to be here. And that legacy that you had is not going to last forever. There was slavery in Rome. We know that. Y'all, you said what happens at the ending? Another beginning. And whatever that beginning, there's at the ending, there's always a beginning to something else. Now, what she's talking about is hope. But what happens when you have a people that's lost hope? That's where, and I'm going to say this, that's where Christianity comes into it. Because with Christianity, the slave Christianity that they gave us is that you should be happy in your suffering. Because when you go to heaven, everything is going to be wonderful. Don't worry about nothing that's going on here. And you're suffering for a reason. But let's think of philosophy. I forget who it was, one of the great philosophers that said that people who suffered, that's their lot in life. And so they should just accept it. I don't know what Ramses is talking about. That's a lot. Kemet was very, when white people came and took. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you, Ramses. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. The human life started in Africa. They came from a black woman and a black man in the story. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, we look at certain things. We look at the Celtic religions. We look at, Baphomet. We look at all of these things and we look like, oh man, did they really believe these things? We look at the Egyptian religion of the different, gods. We look at the Roman religion and Greeks, and we look at them like they just didn't know. And somebody is going to look at us the same way.
I don't. Yeah, it's an interesting philosophy that she has. I was just kind of curious. Let us keep going.
And when we sort of humble them humble our own understandings of whiteness, it seems like the biggest giant that we face. But in the end, right, it is what I like to say is, black folks were out here for centuries and centuries and millennia doing all kinds of wonderful things and probably some fucked up things too. But whiteness is largely an inconvenient interruption. And so we then get to ask ourselves, so why am I here in this moment of it? Like, damn, why did I show up in this particular iteration? And it's like, well, I think we showed up in this iteration precisely so that we could help to figure out an end and a way to the other side of this, gargantuan historical tragedy that is white supremacy.
Relating this to critical race theory, I think that necessarily demands that we know, like, as you said, our place in the long arc of the universe, and not just like this corner of the piece of the pie that we're trying to get, but like how we're nudging it towards equality and equity, right? Because they ain't gonna give up the other thing. They ain't gonna give up any of this stuff, right? So what we have to do is just keep nudging them out to the left, and then one day we'll realize, oh, we got a bigger piece of this thing than them. And the crazy thing about it is, and this is the worst part about it is they don't understand, because of this understanding of the human condition and humanity, they don't understand that we're going to share, people will share that shit. Like, it's not a zero-sum game, right? When they came to the shores of Africa, nobody murdered them because, some people here, let's see what they want. And when they came to the shores of America, they were able to live. They were starving in Jamestown. And the natives said, look, I mean, we see y'all struggling over here, bro. We'll share some of it with you. And then they genocided them away. So I think the importance of critical race theory is to see, when you look at this world through the eyes of someone else, through a lens that is absent whiteness, you begin to understand that it ain't gonna be that bad. It's more important for white people to see through that lens than black people. And if they do, they will fear the changing world and the changing demographics of America less than, what Ted Cruz fears is going to be a radical redistribution of whatever he thinks we're trying to take from, fourth graders in Oklahoma. And so, is there a way? Look, I don't want to put the weight of the world on your shoulders to say, hey, solve racism. But how do we move from that backlash to allow them to understand? Because they're always, as you said, they're good at planning, and so they're always kind of like 10 steps ahead in what they're going to demonize. They're demonizing it before we even get to, the chance to teach it or the chance to push people towards this truth.
I mean, I think a couple of things about it. One is, I'm thinking about the fact that our kids are always living in a racialized context. So I'm like, as a fourth grader, I was looking around going, why ain't no black kids in this honors class but me and like a handful of kids, right? Our kids are making racial assessments. White kids are making racial assessments about their own superiority or who's better than or their own entitlement. Black kids are also doing that. Brown kids are doing that. We are all trying to figure out why the world looks the way it does, who is getting opportunities and who is not. We are wired in that way, I think, fundamentally. And so I'm like, our students, our kids, they do have an understanding because they are critical thinkers about the kind of racial situations and the racial setup that we have. And I think we need to be honest about that essentially what white folks are trying to do is unbeat the drum, right? To act as though like we don't come here already sort of working this thing out and trying to figure it out. The other thing that I think, which is super interesting, and to your point, no, they're not going to give it up, but whiteness is killing white folks, right? It's Jonathan Messel's book, Dying of Whiteness, right? For all of the imperial machinations in this country and abroad, their numbers are shrinking. They have so priced themselves out of the market, like, that they can't even, like, so, here's one of the cruel ironies of whiteness, I think about this a lot. When we talk about gentrification all the time, all my friends that are from Brooklyn are like, they just kept going further on the train and then pricing us out. But the thing that's interesting is white people have become so expensive that they can't even afford themselves, right? They actually elevate the prices in neighborhoods so much that now their lives have so much more economic value that is not like at a level of peer. Look, I'm trying to say that to the extent that Black life is undervalued, we might have to entertain the notion, A, all lives are priceless in value, but B, that if we think economically and structurally, white lives actually are structurally overvalued to the extent that they undervalue other groups of people. And part of what that means economically is that they explode property values so much when they move in that they can't afford it, which is why they're not having no kids. because they can't actually. So white people's birth rates are going down. They're the only group whose birth rates are going down in the country because they literally cannot afford to put their children, newer generations into the middle class, and so they keep on delaying birth rate. And that is a world in which economically we literally live in a system where even white people cannot sustain the cost of their own lives, right? And by that I mean the elevated cost of their own lives. It's super perverse, and also they kind of deserve it, right? And so,
all right. They are keeping it very, very real. They are not. They are talking the way they would talk, and white people happen to be listening, and that's why I just love this conversation. You know, I don't know if this rings true for you, what they're saying. I think that they're ever so slightly missing out on some of the economic things that the wealthiest elites are doing, but they're mostly white people, so still, I suppose it matches. I don't know if we're going to be able to finish tonight. We're going to jump in on this, and we'll try to go a little bit further.
So
it's getting awfully late.
Right. Just hit the 2-hour mark. Well, first of all, I'm from New York. I've seen the gentrification. And like she said earlier, it's a long game. When crack was put into Black neighborhoods, guess where it went? It went to the cities. And the crime and all this, and they came up and bought all of these things up. But the issue is, who's buying the houses? A lot is going on is these corporations are buying the houses to where everybody's going to be a renter. Okay. White people have known for the longest that their numbers was going down. And Jane Elliott spoke of this. And when she
spoke, and all that, yeah.
Right, the birth dearth. That's what this thing about abortions, building the wall, letting all these Russian women come in here and have these babies, and and then you have to think white supremacy. They like using white supremacy with a tan. So that's when you have the middleman or model minority. Okay, we don't like Asians. But if it's going to be above you and me, between us, we're going to put them there. Okay? We don't like these Hispanics, but if it's going to put me in between you, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to tell them all the things that they want to hear. And we've seen what happened at the border to both Hispanic people, and we've seen what happened at the border when it came to Haitians. We've seen what happened when they wanted to lower the rate of Asian people, legal immigration. It's like a game of tag. I mean, they haven't been on the Muslim thing in a little while. That should be coming around in a couple of days. They hit women, they hit Black people, they you know what I'm saying? So it's like a game of tag. And like you said, when gentrification comes in, it's nothing but colonization. Oh, I don't like this music. I want you to turn it off. So you don't go to the person and say, hey, blah, blah. They make laws where you can't play this music. Oh, Howard University out here in Washington, D.C. Remember the man was like, well, the campus is out here. If they don't like us walking our dogs where they go to school at, they should just move the HBCU. Remember that? That's whiteness. That's whiteness right there. Where you have an HBCU that you had to have for your people to go to school, but because I can't walk my dog here, you should move your campus. Versus me respecting, because if that was Harvard, if that was Stanford, if that was UCLA, if that was any Notre Dame, you would not bring your white ass with your white dog on that campus. And she's right. We talked about how whiteness is killing other white people and it's detrimental to white people. Remember the desegregation of the pools, the desegregation of the school? You know what rich white people said? We just gonna close the school. We're just gonna Right, we're just gonna close school. So that affects poor white kids, that affects Asian kids, that affects everybody that can't go to a private school. The pool, right, the wealthy elites. So
yep, I think that's what it boils down to, is we are hating on the wrong people, and we've been doing it for forever, and it might be too late. And on that lovely note, I hate to say goodnight to everybody, because this has been an incredible conversation. We're not quite done. Do you have anything to say in closing? Because I have to go to bed, and I bet a lot of you guys do too.
I can't wait for the part deux or part deux, and we can finish this out. But I love that. Like I said, this is the first time me hearing about this, and all I would say goodnight. And the way I'm always gonna say this: we're gonna fight you till hell freezes over, and if there's any more injustice, we're gonna fight you on your ice. So get your skates.
And you're gonna have a lot of accomplices, I think. I hope. That's all I can hope for. Thank you so much to everybody for coming around. If you believe that it's way past time for white folks to take racial responsibility, learn our real racial history, teach other white people, please consider subscribing. Patrick, T, Tolanda, Mahami, everybody, thank you so much for being here. It's been amazing. Please come again. I do the show with my sweet Anastasia, my wonderful Anastasia, every week, and it's all about talking about it and thinking about it in conversation. Thank you so much for being here. All right, don't forget to subscribe and share videos, and try to watch the rest of this. It keeps going. It's interesting.
Auf Wiedersehen. Bye.
Right. Be safe, everybody.